Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 22 of the Asian Football Show. I am, as always, joined by my good friend Arya, as well as a very special guest. Today, I'm joined by Kenta Hagiwara, a very passionate Japanese football fan. Would you like to introduce yourself to us, Kenta?
I cover Major League Soccer and US soccer over here as a journalist, credentialed journalist, and I also watch a ton of Asian soccer and follow it. So happy to be on.
And Arya, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. It's good to be back. We've been lacking, guys. All right, let's be honest here. But yeah, we got a guest here, Kenta, a good friend of mine. So yeah, what are the topics for today's episode, Erfan?
So we'll start off with the big one, which is the World Cup qualifiers draw, the round three draw, which was made a few weeks ago. Then we'll move on to the club competitions, starting off with AFC Champions League Elite and the AFC Champions League 2, in which we know the playoffs now. Then we'll move on to the newly founded the AFC Women's Champions League. We had the draw for that as well yesterday, as well as we have the Olympics football tournament, the men's tournament, and the women's tournament as well, which we'll go through. And then there's also some minor tournaments which we'll cover at the end. Okay, so Arya, would you like to take us through the World Cup qualifiers draw?
Yeah, so the draw happened on the 27th of June, so a few weeks ago, and this is the round three. So I believe the top two teams from each group automatically qualifies for the World Cup, and the others will battle out in another round. So for Group A, we've got Iran, Qatar, Uzbekistan, the UAE, Kyrgyzstan, and North Korea, which should be a pretty self-explanatory group. I think everyone's expecting Iran to top it. But I don't think it's going to be as easy for Iran, right? We've got Uzbekistan, which we've played twice, struggled against twice. Qatar, who recently beat us at the Asian Cup. We don't need to talk about that. As for the rest, the UAE, Kyrgyzstan, and North Korea, I think they're going to battle it out as well. So it's a pretty self-explanatory group, a pretty boring group. I mean, we've played Qatar, Uzbekistan, and the UAE a million times. Um, Kyrgyzstan is a pretty cool game, and North Korea against Iran, that's going to be a crazy ass game. The memes are going to be insane on that day. For Group B, we've got South Korea, Iraq, Jordan, Oman, Palestine, and Kuwait. Again, another group in which South Korea are the favorites to win it, and all Arab sides for the rest. And it's going to be very hostile. I can say that pretty confidently. I think Twitter is going to have a field day with each of these fan base going at it, and just South Korea in the corner who just has no idea what's going on. And what we've seen at the Asian Cup, Iraq has been very good. They've beaten Japan. Jordan is very good. They were in the finals. Palestine as well, who held their own. So I think realistically, I think these positions can go either way for any of these sides. And South Korea isn't a team that has been amazing these past few months. If we're being honest, even in the Asian Cup, they're kind of lacking. So there might be a surprise first position there. So we're just gonna have to wait and see. And then for Group C, which is the final group in this, we've got Japan, Australia, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, China, and Indonesia. Now, this is the spiciest group, and you got to feel for Japan. These guys never catch a break when it comes to the third round of these. I mean, again, Australia, they have Saudi Arabia, so they've got two top teams in Asia, so they've got to battle out again. I still do think Japan will go through pretty comfortably, to be honest. I think they'll do it. Australia and Saudi Arabia haven't been the best either. They're going to meet Bahrain again. Then there's going to be China and Indonesia. I think the top three is pretty much already set. I think everyone agrees here. Japan, Australia, and Saudi will go through, unless there's a surprise one out there. But I think those three teams are far ahead of Bahrain, China, and Indonesia. We're just gonna have to wait and see who finishes first and second to go through automatically. So yeah.
Yeah, good point. And Kenta, I'll come to you here. I want your thoughts on Group C. Now, obviously, over the last three cycles of World Cup qualifiers, Japan, Australia, and Saudi Arabia have all been in the same group. So I think, yeah, I don't know how you feel about this, but can you just give me your thoughts on this whole situation and the whole group?
Yeah, I think the group as a whole should be pretty competitive. Obviously, as you said, Australia, Saudi Arabia, and Japan consistently finding themselves in the third round, just facing off, trying to get a top 2 spot to qualify for World Cup last year, or last time around for the 2022 Qatar World Cup. It was Saudi Arabia topping the group, with Japan finishing second, and Australia going to that intercontinental. I this group, I China's, I think, was also in that group as well. And then you also have like Indonesia and Bahrain. It's not as deep, I think, as if you compare it to like Group A. I think there's more teams that could finish top 2 than what you're seeing in Group C. I think it's just the big 3 teams between Australia, Japan, and Saudi Arabia that can really realistically compete for that automatic qualification. Where like as in like Group A, North Korea, I think, played really well in the last round. They could make a surprise finish in second place in that group. Uzbekistan have been competitive a lot in the past few months, and obviously Qatar and Iran. So I think there's more teams that could finish top 2 there. Whereas in Group C, I think it's really the big 3 teams. Japan, in terms of form, they've gotten the results, but they haven't, in some of these matches, especially against North Korea, they haven't been exactly like really impressive. They barely beat North Korea at home and then 1-0, and then they got a 3-0 result only because of a forfeit, because they decided not to host in Pyongyang. So we'll see how this Japanese national team side does. I expect them still to finish top 2, of course, and then between Saudi Arabia and Australia, that should be a really fun match. The 2 legs of those head to head should be really, really enjoyable to watch. But yeah, overall, I would want to say kind of a self-explanatory group in that sense, where it's 3 teams fighting for top 2, and the other 3 trying to fight for that next round qualification.
Yeah, interesting point you made on North Korea. They're maybe one of the challengers or one of the surprises to get direct qualification. And I think you would know better, as Japan did play against North Korea in the second round when they played in Tokyo, and I watched the highlights of that game, and I can say North Korea defended really, really well. And they surprised me because it's been a while since they played football internationally properly. And it's a surprise, and I think it's good to see. It's good for Asia's level. So my personal thoughts on the group, for Group A, as Arya said, it's some very repetitive teams, and Qatar, Uzbekistan, and the UAE as well. We played them a lot over the last few years, but I think even though some of these teams could cause a threat for us, I think we should still top the group and qualify without any issues. I'm looking forward to that UAE game here in the UAE. Hopefully, we'll be attending that. And Kyrgyzstan also, I think that's actually a very tough away game, because if I'm not mistaken, the stadium in Bishkek is artificial grass. So we might be facing the same problems as we did against Turkmenistan in the second round. So we have to be careful on that. For Group B, now this is a very exciting group actually. All these Arab teams, and then like Arya said, you have South Korea over there in the corner. I think it's gonna be some very difficult away days for South Korea, especially against Iraq or Jordan. One team I would like to point out here is Kuwait. I spoke to some Kuwaiti fans, and they just seem to be happy that they made this round. They didn't think they would make it, and that is kind of expected because Kuwaiti football has been on a down over the last 1 or 2 decades, and I think the fact that they made the third round and are back in the Asian Cup after missing out 2 times, I think it could maybe be a step back up in the right direction for them. And then for Group C, self-explanatory, as Kenta said. I think it's just those 3 teams fighting for the automatic qualifications, and then the other 3 fighting for the 4th round spot. Anything you guys want to add, or should we move on to the club tournaments?
I think it's pretty interesting because, to be quite fair with you, all the big sides, maybe with the exception of Japan, have been struggling quite a bit. And I say Japan, they crashed out of the Asian Cup quite badly. And like, there's a question I have for Kenta. Are you sort of, I wouldn't say scared. Scared is not the appropriate term, but are you worried that perhaps Moriyasu has been exposed?
I I don't know how I feel about Moriyasu. I think my opinions, even during the World Cup and the success he found during that group stage, and how he handled that group stage, especially against Costa Rica. Even then, like I don't necessarily think I was consistently on the Moriyasu train. And obviously, a lot of I think neutral fans or people that aren't Japanese fans will look to the fact that he got results against wins against Spain and Germany and be like, hey, like you crushed it in that group. But then they're I guess you're getting results pretty consistently, so you can't be too upset. And outside of that Asian Cup, where there was an issue with Junior Ito on the team, and you had some injuries with Kato Mitoma, and I think it's not a good enough excuse when you have that much squad depth. But like he had some excuses to go off of, and he's been consistent in terms of getting results outside of that. It's really really tough to be critical of Moriyasu. I mean, you look at that stretch late in like 2023 when he was winning 5-0 pretty consistently, 5-0, 6-1, 5-0. Like it's really hard to be critical of a coach who's getting results consistently. So we'll see how this next stage of the World Cup qualification goes for this Japanese national team. I think anything short of finishing with an automatic qualification is concerning, but again, he has the track record with this national team where I don't think a fan should be concerned at this point. I think they're still like you're still the favorites to finish in this group at the
I
top of the table.
agree. I agree because from what I've seen against North Korea and Iran being the most, recent results is they were both very physical sides. And from when I'm looking at the Japanese team, it seems that they are struggling when they do play against physical sides. And in that group, you've got Saudi Arabia and Australia, which, yeah, they are physical, but I wouldn't say as physical. And then you've got Bahrain, China. Like, I really want to worry about Bahrain and China and Indonesia, to be honest. But I think it would have been a different story would Japan have been in the same group as, like, I don't know, in Iraq or something like that. Those physical sides that can really trouble Moriyasu, but I wouldn't necessarily worry. I think Moriyasu's got this on the cover. And my next question leads here for Erfan. The same for Amir Nouri. I don't think there's a single Team Melli fan who likes this guy anymore after what happened against Qatar in that Asian Cup. Are you worried with what might go on in these qualifications?
Actually, I'm not worried because even though some of the games may seem challenging, and I've been critical of Qalanoi, the same as a lot of other Team Melli fans. Maybe me a bit less, but I still think that he's had very controversial decisions and tactics. But I think even the last cycle when we had Skocic, a lot of people didn't believe him. They thought maybe he didn't have the necessities or the quality a coach needs to take us to the World Cup. But he did at the end, even though the performances were questionable. I think we might have a similar situation here because the teams we should be beating here, to be honest. Maybe except Qatar, Uzbekistan, they should be the only difficult games. But other than that, we should be winning all the games, and we should be qualifying with any coach realistically.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for this qualification round. Very excited. I think everyone that watches it in football is looking forward for this. I mean, it's the biggest thing right here. Moving on now to the new AFC Asian Champions League Elite and AFC Champions League 2, the playoff ties. Erfan, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Yes, very exciting ties as we have the new AFC Super League or AFC Champions League Elite. So there's actually just two playoff spots left. Two league stage spots left for the West. It's going to be contested between Sepahan, Shabab Al Ahli, and Al Gharrafa. In the preliminary round, Sepahan will host Shabab Al Ahli on the 6th of August. Then the winner of that game will travel to Qatar to play Al Gharrafa 5 days later. And the winner of that will join the teams in the league stage, which I'll go through them now. Al Ain, Al Wasl, Al Hilal, Al Nasr, Al Ahli, Al Sad, Al Rayyan, Al Istiqlal, Persepolis, Makhtakur, and Al Shorta. And then in the East region, we have just two teams. It's Shandong Taishan of China, who will host Bangkok United. And then the winner of that will join Vissel Kobe, Kawasaki Frontale, Yokohama, Ulsan HT, Huang Steelers, Gwangju, Shanghai Port, Shanghai Shenhua, Boream United, the Central Coast Mariners for the AFC Cup, the last AFC Cup winners, and Johor Darul Ta'zim of Malaysia. So actually, I wanted to talk to Kenta about maybe some info, or maybe he can tell us about some of the Japanese teams in these tournaments and what are the expectations of them.
Yeah, so the three J League sides, I think you briefly mentioned them. Vissel Kobe, Kawasaki Frontale, Yokohama If Marinos. Look, Vissel Kobe, I think they're still third at the time of recording this in the J League table. They've had a good season. They won J League this past year. I don't think they'll be competitive, I think. But you look at Yokohama F Marinos, who sit 12th out of 20 teams in J League, and then Kawasaki Frontale, who also sit 14th. These two teams have not been very good this year in J League play. Had the chance to watch both of them in Japan just about a month, like couple weeks ago here. They just haven't had that winning edge. They've been drawing a lot of matches. They haven't been able to get that winning goal. They've been conceding a lot of goals. These teams historically have been two very good defensive teams. It's kind of concerning, I think, going into this AFC Champions League format for them to be now overseas, now playing domestically, to have a team that's not really in great form. I don't know how I feel about how they'll fare. I assume Vissel Kobe will play well, but between Kawasaki and Yokohama, I have my doubts. Also, you look at some of these South Korean teams, especially Ulsan, their coach just is the new manager for the South Korean national team, just appointed in July, the start of July here. So now they're without their head coach that got them into this position for them to be in it, the AFC Champions League. So we'll see. And I think Gwangju is like in the relegation part of the table too. So a lot of these Eastern Asian, like specifically with the South Korean and the Japanese club teams, like we have a lot of teams that aren't in good form in their league play. We'll see how that play, that form and that play that they've had so far this season translates over into an international competition. But there's a lot of doubt. I think a lot of questions to be asked of these teams right now.
And I think that this might be one of the reasons of this might be the change of the calendars of the AFC competitions, because previously, until before 2021, it followed the year calendar. So it was like 2021 Asian Champions League, 2022. But recently, it shifted over to the autumn to spring format, which I think favors maybe the Western sides a bit more, because that's how the calendar runs, as well as the rest of the world. But yeah, I think that's probably one of the reasons. Arya, anything you want to add about the East or maybe the West side?
I think you guys pretty much covered it all. Listen, one thing I will add is these points have been made about J League sides in the last edition, where I don't remember who was there exactly, but they weren't doing as well in the league, and they still kind of did well in the Champions League. And what's nice with the AFC Champions League in general is that, bro, you never know what's going to happen. Like, just any Champions League around the world, there's always something that's going to happen. It's very hard to predict, especially a few months out. So best of luck to all the teams, and Estelal is winning everything.
I agree with you there, hopefully. I'm very actually excited for the Sepahan versus Shahab Al Ahly game. Sepahan, the team from my home country, Shahab Al Ahly, my local club. So I'm very excited for that game. Hopefully, it's an exciting game, but I still want Sepahan to win because country comes first for me. And then that's it for the AFC Champions League Elite. Now I'll go through the playoff ties for the AFC Champions League 2. Actually, it's just 2 games, and they're both in the West region. East Bengal will host Al Nasir of Turkmenistan, and then Al Ahly of Bahrain will host Al Kuwait. Both of these games will take place on the 14th of August, and the winner will advance to the group stage of the ACL 2, and the loser will go to the 2024-25 AFC Challenge League. And speaking of that, we also have two playoff games there. Abdish Atakant of Kyrgyzstan, who were actually very surprising last time in the AFC Cup. They made the semifinals, I believe, only losing to the Australian side. And they will host Attack Energy of Afghanistan. So we're going to see a return of Afghan clubs in the continental competitions after almost 7-8 years. Church Boys of Nepal will host Paro FC of Bhutan in the other playoff. So in the ACL too, we have one team from the top nations, the Big Six, you could say, or the Big Eight. And we have another Japanese team here. We have Sanfrecce Hiroshima, who finished third last time in the J League. What about them, Kenta? How are they doing in the J League this season?
Sanfrecce Hiroshima. I like this team. Not like a fan, but like I've liked how they've been playing this year. They brought in Shonan Belmare's Yuki Ohashi as one of their attackers during the offseason, and that fit has been so good for them. They're, I think, fifth in the table, maybe fourth. They've been playing well this year. And they have this brand new stadium, the Edison Wing, Peace Wing Stadium, I think that's what it's called, which is like within easy walking distance from the atomic bomb building. So there's this awesome area there. They've renovated it. They made a brand, well, it's not really renovated, it's a brand new stadium, but it is an incredible area, and I can't wait for the Champions League to come there and to host some of these other great matches. That's going to be a fantastic atmosphere. It's going to be a great match day. If you're ever in Japan and you want a match day, I can't recommend it enough. That's the one you have to go to. But yeah, the team's been playing well for the most part this year. I know they sold some players during the summer window, so we'll see how that affects them. But for the most part, they've been really consistent in terms of getting results this year. So unlike, we briefly discussed Yokohama and we discussed Kawasaki Frontale, I think this team has what it takes to make a really deep run this year. They have the depth, they have the top end talent to make some noise. So I'm excited to see how Sanfrecce does this window.
Yeah, I think they're probably one of the leading favorites to advance to the final from the East region. And then from the West region, we also have some top teams. We have Al Tawan from Saudi Arabia, Al Wakra of Qatar, Tractor of Iran, and Sharjah of the UAE. I want to focus a bit on Tractor here because they've been spending big. They recently just signed a Croatian player. They've gotten 3 players from defending champions Persepolis of Iran. Beravan, Iran's starting goalkeeper, Esmail Ifar, and Mehdi Torabi. All very big signings for them, and there's more coming as well. I think I missed one or two as well, and that's adding to the current quality that they have in the team. There are likes of Ricardo Alves, who got the most assists in the league for the last 2 seasons in a row. They have the likes of Hoseiny, who maybe struggled a bit last season, but we all know he has quality. And of course, Shoja Khalilzadeh, who's had his ups and downs, but he's still a regular caller for the national team. Arya, I want to ask you this question. Do you think that Tractor can maybe pull up a surprise? Because this is the second tier competition. I mean, look at those teams. They're not the Al Hilals you have in the first year. They're not the Al Sads. Do you think maybe they have a chance of getting far in this tournament?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, like you said, the transfer they've made over the past few days have been amazing. I think just the PGPL for some reason just decided to go off when it comes to internal transfers. I'm sure we're going to talk about that later, but in general, I think they can go far. I think they can go far. They've got Baron Van, one of the best keepers in Asia. Torabi, which is a horrible person but a great player. So yeah, if the mentality is there, they can do it for sure.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention, but they hired former Team Melli coach Dragon Scotch as well. So hopefully they do well. And then now we'll move on to the newly branded AFC Women's Champions League. Now I'm very excited for this. It's been a long time coming, and they've had some pilot tournaments before, some test tournaments, but never a proper one. So this tournament is divided into two parts. We have the preliminary stage, which includes 13 teams, divided into four groups, and the top spot will advance to the group stage, which consists of 12 teams. So I'll just go through the teams really quick, and then you guys can give your thoughts if you have any. In Group A of the preliminary round, we have Mayawadi of Myanmar, Young Elephants of Laos, Abu Dhabi country of the UAE, and Al Nassr of Saudi. And these games will take place in Saudi Arabia. In Group B, we have Odisha of India, Ittihad of Jordan, and Lion City Sailors of Singapore. These games will take place in Jordan. In Group C, we have Nasaf of Uzbekistan, Sabah of Malaysia, and APF of Nepal. And then in Group D, we have Bam Khatun, Kichi, and Royal Olympic College of Bhutan. These games will take place in Bhutan. So for the preliminary stage, I mean, I don't think we've heard much about these teams or watched any of these teams, but just give us your overall initial thoughts on this competition, Arya.
Yeah. I'm not so much concerned about who's going to qualify and all that. I just want to see how this all turns out because it's very big. Not just for Asian football, but for women's football, right? We're finally having a proper women's competition in Asia. And the theme here is that a lot of the teams that you just mentioned are from every corner of the continent, as far as Laos, Nepal, Iran, and all that stuff. So that's pretty cool. And I don't know if you guys want me to go through the group stage or if one you want to do it.
I think you can maybe mention the group stage, and then we can have Kenta talk about the Japanese team in this competition.
Yeah. So for Group A, we've got Wuhan Jiangda of China, Hyundai Steel Red Angels of Korea. Then you've got the winners of Group C of the preliminary stage, and then Group A of the preliminary stage. Group B, we've got Melbourne City, Kaya FC, College of Asian Scholars. That is a crazy name. And the winner of Group D, preliminary stage. So that's pretty cool. And then Group C, we've got the only Japanese representative, Urawa Red Diamonds, obviously the women's team. Ho Chi Minh City of Vietnam, and then Taichung Blue Whale, again, a crazy team name, and the winner of preliminary stage Group B. So, Kenta, I'll let you talk about Urawa Red Diamonds.
Urawa Red Diamonds, yeah. First off, I will preface this by saying their matches are so difficult to watch when you're not in Japan. So I haven't had the chance to watch a ton of their matches. It's been very hand-selected, but they were so dominant this past season. They only lost once. It's a 12-team league, so you're playing 11 matches against 22 matches, right? 11 other teams 2 times home and away. They lost once. They've been absurdly dominant this past season. I think it was like 18-3-1 on the season. If any team from J League or WE League, sorry, is gonna make a run and they're gonna make noise, it's gonna be the Urawa side. They've been dominant. They have national team players on that Nadeshiko. They're a really complete side from the defensive side of the ball to being able to score the goals. I mean, just consistently getting results. I'm just looking right here. 55 goals scored in the past season, 17 goals allowed. This is a team that consistently got results, and they were blowing every other team out of the water pretty much. So, yeah, again, first of all, I'm super excited to see how this tournament will go. To have a women's Champions League in AFC is a really exciting prospect as a whole. And we'll see how it goes. But I think Urawa has to be one of the quote unquote favorites going into this, considering how good of form they were until like May when the season ended.
Yeah, thanks for your intel there on Urawa Red Diamonds ladies. I think that's their full name. But before we move on, I want to just talk quickly about Bam Khatun. They won the league, the Iranian league last season. They dominated it. But I want to talk especially about Melika Mohammadi. We've mentioned her a few times in this podcast. Unfortunate events happened, and she passed away a few months ago. So just want to remind her again and send my condolences to her family and loved ones. But hopefully this team can advance to the group stage, because I'm sure that would be huge for Iranian women's football. We know how limited they are, how little resources they have, and I think that even just advancing and being in this tournament would be a huge honor for the whole country. So moving on, we'll move on to the Olympic Games now. Arya, would you like to start us off?
Yeah. Listen, I never thought I'd ever say this, but I'm actually looking forward to the Olympics. I lost interest in the whole thing years ago. I don't think anyone really cares about the Summer Olympics as much anymore, especially football wise. I think the hype is close to dead. If there is anyone watching, it's usually, I guess, the scout, any players, because it's an under 23 squad, so they just watch it to see who's good, who's not good. We're gonna have some big guns, especially that French side, some big name players. But as for the Asian sides here, so we have Uzbekistan in there, we've got Japan, and we've got Iraq, who is there as well. So some pretty good representatives. It's cool to see some of these nations in there. Now, my thoughts on it is I don't know who can go the furthest. Because when it comes to the under 23 stuff, it really isn't something you can predict from the get go. I think we've seen that in previous, not just Asian competitions, but just in general. But I do think if there is one team that can go far, I think it'd be Japan. I think they've got a solid squad. Kenta, we actually spoke about this not long ago, and there's been a lot of, I wouldn't say controversy, but a lot of talks over who's getting into the squad and who's not. So I'm gonna let you talk about that.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll go as far as saying controversies, but yeah, there's been a lot of discussion on this roster. I think the first big thing is they didn't call up a single overage player. In Olympic formats, you get a maximum of three overage players that aren't 23 and under to get onto that squad, and a lot of teams can utilize that. Like with French, you have some great European players on that roster. In Japan, just weren't able to get some players that wanted to play. The names that were like kind of floated around, including Wataru Endo, who formerly played as an overage player in the last Olympic back in Tokyo. They clubs didn't release them, or they didn't ask for other players, so they don't have a single overage player on this roster. So that might be a huge disadvantage going into this, just to not have that kind of experience in a tournament format of a player that's a senior player that's been there, that's done that. You don't have that there. But yeah, this team as a whole, I think Japan, they look good during qualification. They've played a couple friendlies. They played a couple in the U.S. They played in France recently, and they've been defensively pretty solid as a unit. And they're somehow getting goals. They haven't really been creating their chances consistently, especially in that France match. That goal that they scored came off a turnover in the final third. So it's not necessarily that they're always creating their chances, but they're always finding a way to put the ball in the back of the net. Not, in a knockout stage format, or I guess it's technically a group stage before the knockouts. I mean, that's all you can really hope to do, right? And so a little bit of good luck going their way, and a lot of great J League names in there for the U23 side. I think they have a chance to make some noise, but I think it's also limiting when you don't have any overage players, when you're playing against players that are playing in Europe, at the top level.
Yeah, and then the other two Asian nations at the men's tournament are Iraq and Uzbekistan. So Iraq did actually call up some overage players. They called up Ayman Hussein. We saw him; he was very good at the Asian Cup. A bit of controversy, but a very good player overall. And then his teammate in Air Force, Ibrahim Baish, who's only 24 years old, but he's an overage player. He's a very good midfielder. I think he can help them a lot. And then another player from Air Force, Saad Natiq, the defender. He was called up as well for the Iraq side. And I think they have some good quality here with the likes of Yusuf Amin, who plays in Germany. And then there's also Montazar Mohammed, who's currently contracted with Esteghlal in Iran. So they have good quality. Hopefully they can do well. And then Uzbekistan as well. They're just improving on every single age level, age group. And they have Oston Urunov, who plays in Iran. They have Eldar Shomurodov, who's been called up as one of the overage players, as well as Ali Kulov, who plays in Turkey. And this team, hopefully they do well. They had this whole new project called Olympic FC, which they aim to prepare for the Olympics, and it looks like it worked out for them. And now moving on to the women's football tournament, we had two Asian sides or two AFC sides qualifying for this, as it's only a 12-team tournament. Teams were Australia and Japan. So Japan again, Kenta. Do you know what's going on there? How's the team doing, and what are our expectations for the Japanese side?
Yeah, Nadeshiko Japan, they're in an interesting spot right now. The group, I think the rest of the group was like Brazil, Nigeria, Spain. Spain, they took care of business against them in the Women's World Cup, beat them 4-0. But Spain also went on to win that World Cup. So you know how good of a side they are. And then Brazil, they just faced them recently, like months ago in the She Believes Cup. So in that match, I think it ended in a draw and they went to PKs, but obviously in this situation, PKs don't matter. So very competitive match there. And Japan, like they've kind of dominated for the most part their competition in the AFC in terms of the women's side, but they've been fairly competitive against non-Asian teams, but it's a really tough group. It's a really, really tough group. And so we'll see how it goes. This Olympic, I think if you finish in third, you still have a chance of moving on to the knockouts because there's only 3 groups. So we'll see how that Spain match goes in particular, just because of how good Spain have been. They're the world number 1 right now. So the roster is good. They have a lot of younger players, but a lot of experience, obviously, headlined by Kumagai, who made the winning PK to win the World Cup all those years ago in like 2011. So a lot of good balance between experience and youth, and they've been competitive. So we'll see. It should be a really good tournament for them, but we'll see how it goes.
I was muted. And the other AFC side is Australia, led by the legendary Sam Kerr, which I think she's actually missing out on this tournament, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see how they'll fare without their captain. They're one of the top ranked sides in the world, so hopefully they can do well and bring up AFC's name on the world stage. And then moving on, we have some smaller tournaments to cover. Arya, would you like to tell us?
I would like to correct you. It's not a small competition, all right? The CAFA Under 20 Championship is one of the greatest. It's the most prestigious competition out there. I thoroughly enjoyed watching every minute of that. And guys, it was so boring. Like it was so boring. It was a challenge staying up trying to watch that. No, it was an all right tournament. Iran ended up winning it. Kyrgyzstan were second and Uzbekistan were third. I don't really have anything to say. There was a few standout players.
Don't forget the VAR, bro. There was VAR as well.
Oh, okay, guys, we need to talk about this. I don't know who's in charge with the VAR. Why you guys were trying, when I'm saying you, I'm talking about CAFA. Why are you guys trying to flex the VAR, right? So there was this one action, right? I think it was against Uzbekistan where Ismail Nourizadeh, which is the Iranian striker, whips in a perfect ball. And then I don't remember who scored. I think it was Ali Hoseiny, scores a nice header. There was no problem with that. You could, and it was stopped because apparently it was a handball or something. From the replay, it was very obvious that it wasn't a handball. And the VAR check, I kid you not, took around 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. Why? What are you doing? Why is a VAR check taking that long? And all along, there was this big ass square in the middle of the screen saying VAR check. CAFA, we understand you guys have VAR. We're happy for you. You don't need to be putting that for 20 minutes. We got it. And yeah, and the worst part is they ended up accepting the goal. I feel bad for the players, bro. Like imagine staying there for 15 minutes just to tell you that it was a goal, even if you know that it's a goal all along. So yeah, absolute shambles by Kafa. But at least they've got the referee webinar, so that's all good. Anyways, so yeah, moving on to the West Asian football competition under 19. Erfan, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, so the tournament took place in Saudi Arabia this time, and the final was between Saudi Arabia and UAE. And Saudi won that game 1-0. The goal came as courtesy of Talal Haji. I think he was in the Asian Cup squad as well. He's very good, the young player. But one of the more interesting things about this competition was the fact that Albania was playing. So the Albania was, we've had invited nations to the West Asian Football Championships before. I think Iran played in the U23 one a few years ago, losing to Iraq in the final. And Albania also played here, and they had interesting results. They lost to Jordan 3-0, and they drew to Iraq 1-1, and they were eliminated in the group stages. So I think that's maybe good signs for the West Asian Football Federation that maybe it's improving, catching up to these maybe average European sides. Because we saw Albania were playing in the Euros, so they're not a team to be underestimated. So yeah, the final four teams were Jordan, UAE, Syria, and Saudi. And at the end, Saudi Arabia managed to pull off and win it in their home ground. So that's it for these tournaments. I think it's time we talk about some of the transfers over the summer. Arya?
Yeah, listen, in terms of Asian footballers, we have got a lot of transfers to talk about. Obviously, we're not gonna go through every single one. We're gonna talk about the biggest ones. I don't know what would be the best one. I think it's tied between like two or three, or really two, in my opinion. I think it would be Torimi to Inter Milan, and it'd be Hiroki Ito to Bayern Munich, which I'm a Bayern fan myself. Don't know why we went for him specifically. It really came out of nowhere, and I've watched Ito play for a while. I don't know why he's been bought for. Like I just don't get it. It's not really something we usually go for anyways. Um, Nevertheless, it's still big for Asian football. So in that aspect, there's no complaining. As for Torrimito into Milan, would it be the biggest transfer in Iranian football history? I don't know. There's Dai to Bayern, Ali Karimi to Bayern too. So it's up there. He just recently had a friendly against Lugano of Switzerland, if I'm not mistaken. Scored 2 goals, had an assist as well. So I think he's there to show that he wants to be there. He wants to challenge Lautaro Martinez and Marcus Thuram, which is very nice to see. We've got some other Japanese players going into the Prem. We've got Daichi Kamada going to Crystal Palace. We've got Sugawara, the right back, going to Southampton. And we've got other rumors of apparently Kuryo Matsuki, the youngster, also going to Southampton, but that's not confirmed yet, I guess. Although, I mean, he's pretty much leaving the club. So we've got that. I'm pretty sure I'm missing some others. There's been a couple of Koreans who've been going to the championship as well. So I'll let Kenta talk about the Japanese players here.
Yeah, I'll hit on Hiroki Ito for a second in Bayern Munich. I equally am kind of confused by this move as a whole. He's been playing as the left back in Japan's system in the back four, and that's not really, I don't, in any way his natural position. He's a center back by trade, and he doesn't really fit in that Bayern backline, I don't think either. So I don't really know what that move looks like for him, but in the sense that he's kind of positionally versatile on the back line, maybe as a depth piece that makes sense, but I'd rather see him go either stay at Stuttgart or go to a team that he's going to get consistent minutes ahead of a World Cup coming up in like a year and a half here than him sit as a bench team, like a depth piece. So we'll see what that move looks like. Kamada to Palace is a great move for him. To go out of Southampton, I equally think it's a good move. A couple other moves, I guess, would be like Takuma Asano to Mallorca, which is a funny move considering, Hansi Flick just moved to La Liga as well, and the history between those two. Asano scoring the winning goal against Hansi Flick in the 2022 World Cup against Germany, and then having that iconic interview where he's like doesn't know who Hansi Flick is for a second there. So that'll be a fun matchup between Mallorca and Barcelona. But also Zion Suzuki getting another move in back-to-back summer windows to Parma now. It's a better move than Freedom where he was at. And he continues to kind of rise up the ranks of quality of leagues, if that's even the right term to use to describe it. He didn't have a good Asian Cup, so it's good to see him, continuing to get consistent minutes at the club level and to continue to kind of rise up that level of quality of play. So it's a young player. Manchester United were close to signing him last summer. There are some Premier League teams this window that were keeping tabs on him. So there might be a bigger move coming up, in the near future. But I think Parma's a good next step in the right direction for him. So I'm excited for that. There's just a lot of moving pieces in club football for these Asian footballers, which is, I guess, a really exciting thing.
Some other ones, notably from Asian clubs to European clubs. We've got Yeom Ji-sung going to Swansea, Ali Jassim from Iraq going to Como. They've been a tons of controversy recently as well. Seamai Kuma going to AZ Alkmaar, Aliza Jahanbash's old team. Seo Young-woo going to Red Star Belgrade. Takumu Kawamura going to Salzburg. Nestori Irankunda, the Australian, going to Bayern Munich, although that was confirmed a long time ago. Pretty excited to see that, although I don't know if he's even going to get any minutes, to be honest. And one that is, I think, pretty much confirmed, Erfan, if I'm not mistaken, is Javad Hoseiny going to Red Star Belgrade as well. It's pretty much confirmed.
Well, you could say it's almost confirmed. I mean, it was a very, very good offer sent to Sabahan, and he's not participating in their training camp in Turkey. So it basically confirms that he's leaving the club, and there aren't any better offers that Sabahan will accept. So I would say it's 90% done.
And I said I'd talk about it a little bit, so I'll honor it right now. We're talking about the PGPL and all these crazy internal transfers going on, because there's a lot of Iranian internationals who seemingly are going back to the league or getting exchanged, like Baron Van going to Tractor, Ramin Rezayan going to Estelal. Like, that is very weird, if I do say so myself. There's a lot of stuff going on in the PGPL, so I usually like to bash on the league because I don't think it's an amazing league. But if there is one season where you guys should watch it, I guess it'll be this one, because there's going to be a lot of stuff to look out for, a lot of players to look out for as well. And am I missing any other transfers, or is that pretty much it for now?
Yeah, I mean, maybe some of the other internal transfers. We had Iraq international Muhammad Ali, who or Meme, he went to Tractor as well. And then Ibrahim Bayesh, the other Iraqi international who I mentioned before is the Olympic squad. He's rumored to be signing for Sepan as well. So yeah, like you said, just great business. Hope they can keep up and maybe do well on the continental stage. So I think that's it for today's episode. Arya, thank you as always. Kenta, very honored to have you on. We'll leave your socials down in the description. Make sure to check him out. I'm sure if you're a Japanese or even an Asian football fan, or even the MLS, I'm sure you'd enjoy his content. And see you guys next time. Goodbye.